My name is Indigo Willing. I am a sociologist. I'm also a Vietnamese adoptee. I live on the land of the Jagera and Turrbal Peoples in Meanjin, Brisbane, Australia. And I am really excited to be chatting today on the Vietnamese podcast.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world.
Thank you, Indigo. Thank you for coming on. What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you nowadays?
Such a great question to ask anyone from Vietnam, I think, because we have such incredibly different lives and there's so many twists and turns for us, particularly if we're from the Vietnam War generation, because there's a lot of messiness, there's a lot of separation, there's a lot of mobility for many of us, particularly if we're forced migrants. So what does it mean to be Vietnamese? To me is a place marker for me. So I might have many experiences and I might identify in a whole lot of ways, but the Vietnamese identity for me is a placeholder where I always can just rest, I think, and just think, okay, I'm many things. We're all read in different ways, whether we need to have careers or we need to, we're called misfits for whatever, fun things that we do, whether we're, meeting goals or we're somebody's partner or we're not. I think just being Vietnamese is a very soulful, restful place for me. It's somewhere where I can feel grounded and feel in touch with more than just myself. I feel like it's a connection point to community, to ancestors, to history. And it doesn't have to be a really clean connection. It doesn't have to be incredibly, knowledgeable, or I don't need to be fluent in Vietnamese or any of that. It's just a really nice place to think this is a very strong part of who I am, regardless of what I do. It just is a very strong part of me.
Before we get into the other aspects, the wonderful aspects of your life and work, I want to get into some fun aspects of your life, which is skating.
Sure, I love talking about skateboarding.
So apparently you got into it a little bit later in life, right? At 41?
Yeah, correct. I started really late in life.
And did you ever skateboard before then?
No, not really. I just, I grew up around a surfing beach and a lot of the guys skated. There were really surfer dudes with the blonde hair and the, blue eyes and very, very sort of graceful, but very masculine. And, here I was, this tiny Vietnamese girl who was very shy. And it was quite racist when I grew up. Just for context for any listeners, I grew up in the 1970s and 80s during the Vietnam War migrations. And, where I was, there wasn't many Vietnamese or many Asian people, to be honest. So it was hard enough just walking down the street, going to the shop to buy something to eat without being abused in some way or called silly names. I thought, then sort of pushing myself into this very masculine, really cool subculture of which had a lot of gatekeeping in itself, I guess. I thought I just don't have I don't have the strength. I've just got to get through, get through high school, get through working, and then later get through uni, and really find myself before I have the strength to do something that sort of different for women. It's not so different now, but there certainly was for a long time. So I didn't start until I actually had studied, worked, got a PhD, and then had a child and was a parent. And then my son started primary school. I just had more time. So for many people, I'm like a reverse skater. Often they skateboard when they're young and really go for it, and then they get a job and settle down and they don't skate as much. And I was the opposite. So I thought, oh, now's the time. Now I've done my duties. I've tried to, contribute and study and do all the things that I think I should make the most of my opportunities in life. And now I'm really ready just for a bit of me time and a bit of fun time. And I think this will be good for my confidence and just ticking off another chapter of which I had wanted to write, I guess, in my life.
And how did you actually get into it?
Amazingly, I have friends from all over the place, and particularly with Vietnamese people. You kind of all know each other. You get a bit insulted being Vietnamese when someone says, "Oh, you must know such and such," and you go, "How dare you?" But yes, I do know them. It's like so. And part of the Vietnamese, I started asking around the Vietnamese community, like, does anyone skateboard or know someone that skateboards? And then somebody knew a photographer that was Vietnamese that took pictures in skate parks, and bit by bit, they found somebody in the arts that actually knew a filmmaker that skateboarded. And she's not Vietnamese, but she is from a background that's very marginalized. And she was a bit scared to go back to the skate park. She already knew how to skateboard, but she found that environment very intimidating. So we decided to start skating together. And we went and got lessons with children. It was like these free to learn lessons with little kids. And it's like, yes, we're grown women, but we feel safe here. And so, yeah, we really looked for occasions where we could just be supported and feel safe and just start rolling. And then once you get a bit of confidence in the skate park, you just can, you tend to rock up by yourself and make new friends and so on. But I really found it through the sort of arts and music community, because skateboarding has, it's more than just rolling on a board. It's kind of like it's a subculture with music and fashion and filmmakers and all sorts of things. So it's almost like a Vietnamese community. Like once you hook in, like you got like endless people you can have coffee with any day or hang out with and just, have something in common with.
Were you worried about breaking bones or anything when you start? Because I think about that. I'm like, I was reading your, Instagram page, and I'm like, that is some dangerous stuff to be starting in our 40s, right? But you're like doing ollieing, and you're grinding on the rails, and I'm like, what? This is all like, it's pretty courageous for somebody of our generation to start now. I mean, I don't dare do it, and I skated when I was a kid, and I looked at it, and I'm just like, wow, this is like bone chilling.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I think so. I think you're absolutely right that
But
any
you don't think
sensible
about it.
person, yeah, sensible people should at our age probably take up, I don't know, card games or something, with a poker in the evening with your mates. Probably I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. At the same time, I feel, without it being sort of biologically innate or anything, I feel that Vietnamese people are very tough. We have a real drive, and particularly from my generation, from anyone that came out through the war, you're very tough. You're tough as nails. You might be, even if you're super feminine like me and you're super small or whatever. So much of life's hurdles, have been thrown your way, and there's just this constant persistence and determination just to get the job done and no nonsense. And like that really helps with skateboarding. You can hesitate and you can worry and you can like be defeated by your failures, but I don't think that's necessarily in my makeup. I think my persona or characteristics or whatever they are, traits, are very much just trying to do things that are difficult and get through it, or they don't phase me as much as they might others. So skateboarding is like that too. You don't get any of those tricks without practice, without falling, without hurting yourself occasionally. But at the same time, it's a very rewarding process because there's no fakery around it. You can't fake getting a trick. A skateboard is very truthful to you, and you get what you put in. And so I really like that. And there are some very famous Asian skateboarders as well, which was really cool. So yeah, I think I could list a whole bunch. There's Jerry Hasu, there's Daiwan Song, there's Vietnamese skaters. So yeah, you can really just also find role models, I guess, in this sport. Whereas I don't know if you're doing basketball or something, it's a lot harder to find as many idols in that sport. And that can be something that makes you determined in yourself as well. But definitely the skateboarding to me just seemed like a really nice way to break stereotypes as well, because I've had to grow up, as we'll probably discuss, I was adopted and grew up in a non-Vietnamese family, and really had to work through people's stereotypes and prove them wrong just to go about my day. So I think skateboarding was the same to me. It was like, it's marketed towards masculinity and, danger, but I think that anybody can do it if they get a lot of enjoyment from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just, let myself not be held back by stereotypes or, fears that, you can overcome.
Your training as a sociologist and as an academic had probably crept into sort of like the skate parks when you're like now active in it. I'm imagining at some point, does the academics and the sport kind of fuse together in your mind? Or did you go into it with saying, I'm going to study the world of skating as I would sociology?
Oh, such a good question. I think some people do see studying skateboarding as a calling, but for most of us, we've become academics first. So there are a bunch of academics that write about skateboarding and who are skateboarders. And in 2019, they actually had their first skateboarding academic conference, which is where I met many skateboarders that I write with or do work with sociologically. But I think we're all skateboarders first. And then because we are trained to see the world in particular ways, and particularly when it comes to things like, gender equity or discrimination, we've already got some kind of lenses and tools to sort of unpack something that doesn't feel quite right, or something that could be improved, or something that's working really well. So, yeah, I think you just, as a sociologist, it gives you a lens onto the world of which then you make sense of things. And so initially I'd started skateboarding to get away from work. I thought, oh no, like somebody said, you should write about skateboarding. I'm like, oh no, like this is my fun time. Don't ruin it. And then of course, you live in the world that you write about. And, I was finding that some of the women were getting picked on, or people were being discriminatory about people's sexuality or their gender or whatever. And I thought, I just want to speak the truth and make a space that's, again, comfortable for me and my friends want to do that too. So, we can create spaces where we can just be ourselves, even if it doesn't change the world. It's our space to, make comfortable, and sometimes those little steps can really resonate. So, yeah, definitely.
That leads me to think about at our age when we see injustice at the skate park, on the playground, we would handle it different than we would in our 20s. So have you encountered bullying or, little young people antics, and you had to go and really make it right?
I think the community can sway many ways, and younger people are actually really good teachers. And there's a skateboarder that does a lot of amazing work, Kim Woozy. I think she's from Taiwan, but she sort of talked a long time ago about when you're our age, when you're adults, you should look for youth mentors. So not somebody that's young to mentor, but somebody that's youthful to mentor you, to keep you out of how you get stuck, or to let you move with the times, let you learn the terminology that's respectful, that has changed. And I feel like at the skate park, I'm not looking for kids to teach me, but they teach me so much in terms of what's fair, in terms of letting go of a lot of assumptions. And so that part's been really cool. Sometimes you do need to also intervene or step up when some people are being unfair or discriminatory. And, I'd say the majority of people are pretty fair in skateboarding and just want to go there and skate and have fun. But of course, some people will be carrying prejudices and things that they think are funny towards minorities. You have to sort of say that's not on. So, there were a couple of guys that were being very transphobic, and, they were trying to make themselves look funny. And I really called them out, and I was ready to challenge them. And I don't really condone violence, but I was very, I thought, if we're going to have a fight and I'm tiny, I'll fight you, because
Really?
I don't want this person picked on, because you're better at looking after other people than yourself. Yeah. So another instance where I think it's, I just froze, was that I was there and there was some, very, very well-dressed hipster kind of kids. And when I say kids, I mean like people in their 20s. And one of them said, oh, he doesn't like Asian people. And that, Asian people are, really annoying when they talk in their language and stuff. And normally I'd stand up if they were picking on somebody else, but because they were picking on me, I was really stunned. And I just didn't have anything to say. And I probably would have just gone home and cried. But an Indigenous skateboarder got up and just called that person out immediately and said, told them where to go in like very strong language and was ready to fight them. So I thought, oh, like sometimes you don't have the energy to protect yourself because you're carrying certain wounds and traumas and baggage from a lifetime of this. So you're probably out of fuel, and other people have the fuel for you. So I think it's reciprocal. You won't always be able to stand up for your particular marginalization or when you're being discriminated against, but when you see it in somebody else and you recognize and you remember that feeling, you're empowered and you're energized. So yeah, I found that really interesting. I was very disappointed in myself with the racist. I thought I'm going to be tough if I ever find a racist in the skate park, but I'm not. Well, I wasn't that time. I was really shocked and sort of felt like a 5-year-old again and
Stunned.
wanted to go home and cry. So yeah, you just never know.
Yeah. Is skating and the skate culture in Australia similar to the skate culture in the US, where it's predominantly a street culture? And I ask, hopefully, it's a naive question because hip hop culture in Vietnam is a little bit different from the hip hop culture in the US. A lot of the kids are not really from the streets, but the adoption of hip hop culture in Vietnam has taken on a new form of expression, and they borrow from the street culture in the US, but it's not entirely really street culture per se, the way street culture in hip hop in the US is. And I'm wondering if the same translation in the skating world is the same in Australia.
Well, that's such a good question. I often talk to people and I say, even though Americans speak English and we speak English over here, and a lot of our food and clothes are the same, there's such enormous cultural differences when I hang out with Americans,
yeah,
or vice versa. And they're very subtle sort of behavioral things. Like Australians are friendly, but they don't befriend you. Whereas Americans are so great hospitality. Like if you're a stranger, they will like say, "Oh, let me drive you here, or let me show you around town. Let me take you to the best burger place." And you feel like you've immediately got these new friends. Whereas in Australia, people are friendly, but you almost have to have gone to primary school with them and live with them like through your childhood for them to trust you and like you that much. You really got to earn, like I've heard this from travelers all the time. So in skateboarding, the Australians are pretty friendly, and you can go and skate with them, and that's a really good side of the Australian thing, and I find that same with America. In terms of so that friendliness, I think, translates well, but it hasn't always been that way. It used to be very territorial, like surfing. So if you weren't from that skate park and you're not a local, people would kind of feel they were a bit sus and check you up for a long time. And people have been very good to me skateboarding. Like I'm a mum, I'm middle-aged, I'm a woman, and I started at a time when none of that was really that common at the park, and people were really great to me. But I did have one guy say to me, "Oh, you've got to skate here for about 3 months till you earn till people will really warm up to you." I was like, I don't know if I'm going to last 3 months. It's really hard skateboarding, but let's see, kind of thing. And I thought that's their thing. It's cool. In terms of street culture, like I just know my little world and my experiences, and I kind of learnt to skate around men. Like I co-run a women's skate network for women and non-binary people and for queer people, because we couldn't find a space where we were the norm and we were the majority. But I did actually learn through the dudes. So my experience of skateboarding has been very masculine. And there's a skateboarder called Christina Belling, who's very, very influential in skateboarding, done amazing things. And she describes her experience skateboarding like being raised by wolves, because she too sort of, learned to skate amongst the dudes. And you learn different ways to skate. Like I don't wear all the protective gear. I don't wear a helmet. I don't wear all the pads. And I do like to street skate. Whereas a lot of the mums that join with each other and in very sort of, more mixed environments or very women-centric learn to skate spaces tend to skate transition and bowl, and, they wear more safety gear. They're much more safety conscious. They're much more, they have less defensiveness when in the park. They might see it the way that you would go into a tennis court or, go to the beach and see the sand. Whereas I always see it as quite, I've got to sort of assess various risks and see who's the local and who's, like I don't want to skate this way because that will make me look girly and like all this silly baggage that I have. So yeah, there's like different cultures in skateboarding. There's many cultures, and I've definitely seen a few. It's almost like, being Vietnamese and being adopted, you see things from the outside a little bit, or you have like multiple ways you can see something. And also there are much more people coming into skateboarding now. It used to be a real sanctuary. If you didn't have a good family, or if you didn't fit into society, you would gravitate to a subculture and you'd really fit in at the skate park. And that's great. That still exists. I really feel that a lot of people turn to that. I definitely feel, as a person that's been Vietnamese and hasn't always fitted in and has had to put up with a lot of nonsense and everything, that skateboarding has definitely been somewhere where I've been able to just be myself in many ways. But now there's these little kids that are coming, and they're going to go to the Olympics one day. Their parents drive them around like it's a sport, and it's now both a subculture and it's an elite sport. So you have a mix of demographics. And to be honest, that's probably a very healthy thing in the skate spaces, because it stops people being too insular and thinking that their way is the only way to be a skateboarder. So yeah, it is a bit big of a mixed bag, and I think we have so much to enjoy about it. I really think if you're a kid that can just get some wheels, and there are a lot of people that have been unhoused or homeless, they've had addiction problems, they've had all sorts of things, and found skateboarding and really found themselves and blossomed through that. So I like what skateboarding does for all types of people.
We're going to switch gears here a little bit. How old were you when you got to Australia?
I would have been around 13 months and a bit. So my orphanage papers, I'm from an orphanage in Saigon, and then I was moved to World Vision Hospital. So if you know World Vision, the charity, they had like a baby hospital. And then I was flown overseas with a couple of boys that were getting an operation in Australia. So like, some sort of humanitarian mission where they were flying children out of the water, look after them, and maybe they needed operations. And I was on that flight. So yeah, I was really, really young. And on my orphanage papers, one has me born in October and another has me born in January, which I think makes me older. So I always go for the October one. One of them makes me younger anyway. And I like being a Libran, like in astrology. So I think, fine, I'll just go with the January, to the October one. And yeah, it was definitely an unusual time, because it was 1972 and I arrived December 23, so 2 days before Christmas, into Australia.
That was way before Operation Baby Lift, or is it around the same time? No, before.
It was before. So Operation Baby Lift was 1975, when the fall of Saigon and all the planes were evacuating, and they sort of evacuated quite a lot of children, thousands of children on planes. And then you didn't really have migration until the 80s with people.
I should know all this stuff, because
no.
Operation Baby Lift and people who've been on the show, and pardon my ignorance. But
no, we're like a tiny part of the Vietnamese diaspora. We're often forgotten. I was really surprised you want to chat to us. It's like, oh, that's nice.
No, I've never met somebody with such a thick history of understanding the Vietnamese adoption history. Somebody who's really, focused their lives on it. Not only were you an actual adoptee of that time, but somebody who spent your life really studying about it and understanding all of the things that you're quoted in a really fascinating book, Some More Sisters by Erika Miyazaki. And it's just... Yes, and so your name came up in one of the chapters, and I was like, "Whoa, I have to reach out." And reached out to Sheila, and she pointed me. So shout out to Sheila. Thank you for this introduction. And I'm so curious about all the things that Erika brought up in the book. Adoption is not what we think, not what the layman thinks it is. The layperson thinks it's a wonderful thing that these big countries like Australia and the US does for these little small countries like Vietnam. But in actuality, there's a lot of darkness that's surrounding adoption processes?
Oh yeah, well, firstly, Erika Hayasaki's book, Somewhere Sisters, is very hauntingly beautiful, really in-depth researched non-fiction book about twins that have been separated and reunite. And it pulls on so many heartstrings and has so many historical legacies that it sort of taps into in terms of understanding how these children from Vietnam, end up growing up in Illinois or somewhere like, in the Midwest of America. And connecting with their family is just so interesting because, they generally, like myself, we're not raised in Vietnamese culture and learning Vietnamese language. So there are enormous losses and gaps of connection that adoptees experience through being transferred across not just countries but also cultures and generally races as well. So most of us have been raised by white adoptive parents. It's been quite remarkable. So we talked about Sheila before. Sheila Pham is a Vietnamese icon in Australia, and she's what I call a Vietnamese, but a Vietnamese Australian. So there's Vietnamese adoptees, and we weren't necessarily growing up with Vietnamese families close to us or the culture or the language. Then what I call the Vietnamese Australians are Vietnamese people that speak the language. They've come out maybe 1.5 generation, second generation and beyond, but they've generally grown up with parents in the house and lived in areas where there's a strong Vietnamese influence. And then there's obviously the Vietnamese in Vietnam. So again, like another sort of, community and population that we're all connected to, but not. So there are all these like separations when you're adopted. So we're not quite Vietnamese migrants in the traditional sense, and we're definitely not Vietnamese nationals in the way that you grow up in Vietnam amongst your own, country and close to your ancestors where they were buried or anything like that. So yeah, it's a cultural journey. It's an emotional, kind of very fraught at times experience. It can be an identity. I like to think of adoption. Somebody else taught me this, to think of adoption more as an experience than an identity, because you can get very stuck in that and be very stereotyped or feel very alone sometimes in that. But yeah, the typical story about adoption is like a fairy tale. You go from rags to riches, maybe a story about a poor family, and you're adopted by a middle-class family with, all these things that are material. Maybe the country is stereotyped as being, a very sort of, abject place of, just poverty without any of the beauty or the history or whatever going on there, to this sort of wealthy country. So already you're sort of written into this script of what should be like a fairy tale with a happy ending that's very linear and simple. And of course, as we know from Erica's book and from my community experiences and the people that I'm, very connected to who are adoptees, it's not that. When you're sort of transposed into this different culture with people that are different to you, even if they love you as their own, or they try and make you fit in, society sees you as different. So you always have to balance how other people see you, not just how your significant others see you and yourself. So yeah, it's a whole bunch of things that can be very, I don't know, is it unrequited? There can be many things that are unresolved, as well as just the trauma of losing your family and being moved from your culture and being separated from extended relatives and all of that. There's so many unanswered questions with adoption, and a lot of things that are unresolved as well. So you're kind of living both with you're kind of walking the earth with these ghosts of the past, with these sort of puzzles that you don't know if you're ever going to solve, and sort of also just carrying a particular weight of loss and not knowing. I find that there's something in adoption that isn't regularly talked about.
Many times on this show, people come on, they're clearly second generation because their parents are first generation, and they call themselves first generation, right? And it's a misnomer, because the first generation that touches down on new soil is the first generation. Our parents are the first generation. And the kids that they have is the second generation, right? And then there's this notion of 1.5, which is the kids that come as these little babies and are not fully, they're not born here, but they might as well have been born here. So it's 1.5. But when I think about your story, when I think about Vietnamese babies that arrive, would it be that they're actually 0.5?
That's excellent. That's amazing. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, but I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm like imagining, well, the people that brought you here were not of Vietnamese descent. And then you are not quite born here, so you can't be the first. But then you're a baby, and so you're just half of sort of like this, you're in between these two cultures, really. So it just would be like you're like the half generation, which is a thing that would signify that you were not brought here by Vietnamese parents.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've never sort of thought of it that way, but that's a very perfect way to describe how to classify us, I guess, because we tend to be called 1.5 gen. Because there were a whole bunch of kids that came out as refugees that may or may not have had family with them, and grew up, grew up, but then they weren't born on Australian soil or, foreign soil. But you're right,
You're not bringing culture
sort of,
with you.
Yeah, there's this sort of, we're the beginning of the migration story, given how we got here for Vietnam, the Vietnameseness. You're right. And I always feel like we are Vietnamese, where we have a Vietnameseness that is a little bit more unique than the general experiences of second gen, 1.5 and first gen. But there's no denying that it's such a central part of who we are, to think about, who are your ancestors, even genetic history, like, if you've got diabetes or something, like the doctor always says, oh, have you got any family history? It's like, I don't know, but like, it's in Vietnam. Go give me a plane ticket and I'll go ask some people, like, do we have diabetes? Or I don't know. So yeah.
Before we get into the technical aspects of some of these questions that I have, I want to know how an adoption situation where Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt went to Vietnam or Cambodia or Africa to adopt these kids, is that generally considered in the adoption world as a good thing or a bad thing, or are there nuances that we can discuss?
It's a very controversial question that many people feel very undecided about, and some people feel very, very strongly about, in terms of what I call celebrity adoptions. So the research that I've done as a sociologist, so for my master's, I looked at Vietnamese adoptees. For my PhD, I looked at adoptive parents who adopt children overseas, but some of the other research I've done has been on how people perceive celebrity adoptions, so the Angelina Jolies and Madonnas of this world. And it's really interesting. The adoptive parents that I spoke to don't even approve of these celebrities. They think that they make it look very superficial, and they're wondering how the child can stay so connected to their history, given the enormous disparity between the wealth of the celebrities and the situations where they are removed from often. And I think it's very messy. I don't think celebrity adoptions should be seen as any better than ordinary adoptions, for starters. And we're already trying to problematize what that experience is and where it can be improved. If not, things can be radically changed to make it, more child-centric and, keep the child, their experiences, much more to the forefront of what they need. And for the celebrity ones, it really is that fairy tale from rags to riches story again, which is everything my most important work that I've written about. When I say most important thing that I feel like I've been really driven to write,
right,
to unpack that fairy tale mythology around adoption, that you're like Cinderella and this magical being comes and showers you in beautiful clothes and everything's going to be perfect. And I feel that that's the way that adoptions are perceived in the media. I often find it very contradictory or painful or just unusual that such a wealthy family like the Angelina Jolie and Pitts, or whoever it is that some very wealthy and adopts, don't seem to do much for the family. They have enough money to keep that family together. They could, support a whole village to stay together with no family separations, and yet it's still very them-centric, it's parent-centric. They want to build a family with these children who aren't always necessarily orphans either. They have aunts, they have uncles, they have, they have other family, of which, with the kind of wealth and resources that, those celebrities have, they could definitely do it differently. They don't necessarily need to separate a child and raise them as their own, as if a biological family. They can think about other ways to empower those children and keep them connected to their family. And maybe some do, but we only really hear about them rescuing children. And I said it in quotation marks, that idea of rescuing them, whisking them away to, a wealthier nation and a wealthier household. And it's meant to be better. And we know, well, we don't know, but I think there are accusations out at the moment against Brad Pitt being abusive, and, the Hollywood movie star not wanting him to, so even with all that wealth and money and good looks, like, you can't guarantee these children are having, a superior family experience to, being raised by good care in Vietnam by Vietnamese people. So, yeah, I think there are nuances always, but I definitely think we should be very wary of anything that tries to paint celebrity adoptions as this sort of fairy tale rescue narrative. I think that's very, very dangerous and very colonial.
At what point in your life did you realize, at what point in your mind did you realize, wait a minute, I was not born here and I come from another place?
That's such a good question, because a lot of the kids these days, say from African nations like Ethiopia, they come over adopted quite older. They might be 6. They come over with sibling groups, so they might come over with brothers and sisters. And this is why saying this whole celebrity adoption could be done very differently. But when I was adopted, I think I was about aged 5. And it was very much a time when people would try and assimilate you, but not for evil intentions, to be malicious, but they thought that was the best way to adopt anybody, is raise you as if you're a natural born child to them. And I started school, and people were like very, very, puzzled, or, people very racist. And I had to ask my mum, I said, if I'm your daughter, why did you have to fly to Vietnam during a war to have me? Why didn't you just have me here? It would have been easier. And then they had to explain to me that I was adopted. So I didn't know I was adopted until other kids pointed it out. So as soon as you start to socialize, then you realize that there's some kind of, issue going on, or you are different. And yeah, I was kind of surprised, and I cried. And then they gave me this book called I'm Adopted, because they must have been anticipating they would need to have this conversation one day. And so I looked at the book, and the book was really lovely and wholesome and everything, but it was like a white kid that was being adopted. And I thought, well, they've got it easy. Like, damn, I relate to this book slightly, but dude, you haven't got any health issues I've got.
Point here. Yeah, wow.
So you got like so much to discover as an adopted child of a different race, like transracially adopted. You got to find out firstly you haven't got that mythology of the perfect family, of where there's no breakages or anything. Not that breakages are bad, but you're made to believe in Hollywood, in Disney, that there's a certain type of family that's the ideal family, and adoption keeps stripping that back, and then transracially, then it starts slapping you, and it's like like a punching bag, and then you add the war, and you add like the difficulty of trying to reconnect with where you're from. It's quite a lot to take on as a 5-year-old child, and you do it. That's why I'm saying I'm good at skateboarding. Like, you just got to get through it. Or you don't. I think you get stuck. So, and you got to find a way. Like, you got to find solutions to like the way that you feel, but also, whatever's happening to you that isn't right. And I think when I say you just got to do it and get through it, it's not that I'm particularly brave in any way. Like, I can freeze and be really, like, awfully, but can be awfully frightened. But what I mean is that you don't have other people from your Vietnamese heritage or racial background to help you through a lot of tough things. So when people would be racist to me, and my parents who are white and my brothers who are white would say, oh, they're just jealous of you, or, they I wear glasses and they make fun of me. And you think, oh, like, it's not the same. Like, that's not very helpful. Like, I dig that you have felt a bit, picked on or whatever. But, and, that's nice. They're jealous, but they're not really, jealousy is a bad thing when they make you feel inferior. I'm not sure they're jealous. Kind of thing. But it's a nice one, kind of, explanation. So you really got to work it out. You got to work out being discriminated against and finding some kind of resilience and satisfactory way to cope with that by yourself, or with with not like the deep empathy that you would from other having Asian brothers and sisters, or relatives or siblings, for example. And then when I was growing up, Vietnam was very stereotyped as this barbaric place of abject poverty, where there are always little men in pajamas putting like nice handsome white men in bamboo cages and hitting them. And it's a war. Like, no war looks nice. Like, whatever war you want to choose, they're not great places to be. But I never learned anything about Vietnamese literature, Vietnamese art. We're one of the most literary nations, or peoples in it's just, it was these really beautiful long legends. And that's why I wrote, which Erika Hayasaki put in her book, about this story about from fairy tales to the diaspora. And I looked at Vietnamese mythology about this legend of a handsome prince and a beautiful fairy princess that fell in love and had children, but because they were from very different terrains, the dragon king was from the earth and the fairy was from the mountains or something, they had to separate, and each took, of their 100 children they took 50 children each and separated them. And then the story is about this endless separation yet feeling of connection that Vietnamese people have, because it's essentially like the mythology of the birth of the Vietnamese people, this fairy tale myth of a dragon king and a fairy. And there are various cultures around the world that have origin story. In indigenous cultures, there's a rainbow serpent. We look at mythologies for explanations of our origins, but also to explain types of loyalties or intangible connections that we feel with each other. And I was really drawn to all these amazing stories about Vietnamese warrior princesses, and just the sort of the beauty and culture of Vietnam that I hadn't been told about, because I was always told about war, starvation, children being need to be rescued from napalm, and these things are true too. But if that's the only picture of your culture that you have, you can be very traumatized by it and reject it. And I was finding it very hard to connect with Vietnamese culture and be proud of it with the portrayals and representations that the Western media and movies and relatives are giving me. So yeah, you gotta just always find solutions, and find, if you don't like the picture that's been given to you, you got to just keep digging, I think, sometimes.
How was your family? Did you like it? Do you like the people that you grew up with and raised you?
Yeah, my family are very Aussie. I don't know if like that's a thing over in America, where you've got like, you've got very American family, I've got very Aussie family. So yeah, like, I don't know if you know Paul Hogan from the past with the shrimp on the barbie. Like, we don't call them shrimp, we call them prawns. But yeah, so I grew up with a very Australian builder father and brothers that swore a lot. And this is probably why I can also skateboard and fit in with that masculine culture, because I grew up around tradesmen and like guys that would like do burnouts in cars, and like it was a very typically, in some ways, typically Australian Western white upbringing that I had. And my brothers, none of my family are particularly cosmopolitan. They didn't know much about Vietnamese culture, and it didn't seem that important to them. I think they just thought, we're going to have a sister or a daughter from Vietnam because there's an orphanage, there's a war, we've got space, let's just do it and deal with it later. And then here I am, it's time to deal with it. And nobody had really like any master plan. The Vietnamese community at the time, like, they did take me out to meet Vietnamese people occasionally, and it was always so fabricated and it had no naturalness to it, because we didn't live in a Vietnamese area, so it was almost like, they'd sort of wheel Vietnamese people out and we'd have nothing in common. And then, I would freak out a bit, or, I would be questioned too much about why I didn't speak Vietnamese, or, they'd ask really deep questions of which I had no answers and that were probably quite painful to me. So it became quite difficult in a sense to connect with Vietnamese people until I was much older, until I was in my 20s. And I moved to the city and started studying. And then I went the opposite. I had like Vietnamese flatmates, and, I was always hanging out with Vietnamese, people. But, it was a time also where Vietnamese people had to carry a lot of trauma. They had a lot of stuff to do. They had to make it. I think a lot of the families here, they have this sort of unspoken weight that they had to carry as well. So, people just needed to just not assimilate, but settle into who they were going to be in these new lands. So there was a lot of that going on as well. There are a lot of adjustments, I guess.
And when you finally got to the Vietnamese community, did you ever feel like it was a really tough barrier to break into the community? Because you look like us, you are us, but in essence, your software is completely wired differently than us.
Sure. Yeah. So second gen are no problems. Mainly because like if we go out back then anyway, if we went out for a meal or walking to the train station, we would receive, people would drive by and yell out, you gook, or like Asian hate, or go home. And that's a very bonding experience, regardless of what family you have. Like, you can't change this. As you say, I look Vietnamese. So, and second gen, they didn't necessarily want to speak Vietnamese, or they didn't want to, they wanted to be who they were, which is, Vietnamese Australians, not Vietnamese back home. So the second generation's not been stressful. And if anything, we've all had to pull together a lot of, resources and networks and so on, just to do the kind of things we want to do. So if we want to tell our story and make a film or hold a festival or whatever, it's reciprocal and we can work together. But the older generation, I found it, very intimidating at times. I don't know culturally what's good etiquette and what's, weird for them. And I require a lot of, patience and compassion, and vice versa. I think it's not an easy space, that's for sure.
Yeah. Did you ever go back to Vietnam to find your birth parents or your family?
Yeah, I've been back to Vietnam twice, and I haven't found family, but there's a really wonderful Vietnamese adoptee who ran a project called Operation Reunite, where we have a DNA register. So I found a cousin in Geelong in Melbourne, of all places. And the more Vietnamese mothers that can take the test, that want to, the more we'll have lots of people being reunited. But I've had a lot of, frustrating, very sad experiences searching of it not working out. Like, I found, I'm from an orphanage where they spoke French, and one of the directors of the orphanage after the war moved to France. And I wrote her a letter, and I got it translated into French, I think, for her. Or maybe it was translated into Vietnamese, because I knew she was living now in Paris. And she sent me a letter with some jewelry. So this beautiful jade bracelet. It was a fake diamond ring, but it was very beautiful. And I still have those. And a letter that was in Vietnamese. And for the life of me, I don't know why I just didn't ask somebody in Australia to translate it. But like, there's this dude in Orange County in California that was connected to her. And I thought, I'll send it to him to translate, because, I can't translate this. And, I trust him too, because he was related to her. So I sent it to him, and then I never heard from him again. And the letter got lost, and I'll never know what was in that letter. All I have is this beautiful jewelry and some unknown reason why she sent me that, and a letter that I'll never know what it said, because
and you can't track her down in Paris.
Oh, apparently she's passed away, so there's no going back on that one. And the guy, he must have moved, and people move. I don't know. but yeah, I can try and find him again, but it's going to take a lot of mental energy to pick up all of that, because it was back in the day before the internet was as it was. Now I could go on Facebook and just post it and say, somebody translate this, and Sheila or somebody would just, a friend would just say, yeah, fine. But yeah, back then we relied on the mail, and I think I had Hotmail, which I don't even have Hotmail anymore. So I've lost a lot of the, the correspondence of how I even found her and him. And yeah, it's messy. And that's just one example of searching, these strange things that happen to you, and you live with regrets. And you think, why did I do that? I thought maybe she knew, or maybe she's just like telling, you must come to Paris one day. It's really cool over here, and let me tell you a story about my, my breakfast or something. It could have been pivotal, or it could be just banal. But the fact that I had the letter and sent it and have this jewelry here, it's it's the stuff of movies. It's really quite strange and heartbreaking at times, being adopted.
As I talked to you in the last umpteen minutes about the adoption, your life in adoption, and I'm reading you and I'm reading your facial sort of like reactions as you're telling the story, I think about a few things. The thing that I think about is, are you just a naturally calm, happy human being? Because everything you're reacting to is very calm and happy.
Oh my God.
Or have you spent a lot of time dwelling and processing all this heavy stuff? Because in my head right now, I want to yell, I want to scream, I want to emote, and I want to be mad at the world for, just the sadness that I feel just by listening to your story. But I'm like, you're so zen about it. You're so, calm and relaxed about all of the stories that you're telling me back again. And I'm,
well, there's this context, isn't there? Like, probably if we were drunk at 3 a.m. and I was telling you this by a fireplace, I'd be like, crying. Like, maybe I would get angry and like, I don't know, kick a vlog or something. But, we're in a context where I guess I'm just trying to communicate. I'm talking to you, but we're also having a conversation which we share to others that probably would not know what to do in these circumstances either. And there's always a tightrope that you're walking where you can fall into despair, and it's not very helpful. It's and also just because I'm very fortunate, like when I said before, I waited to skateboard until I did my PhD and wanted to use all my opportunities. I don't believe in the rescue narrative, but I do believe in making the most of what comes your way. And I do know I'm very fortunate to have had many opportunities in Australia. And, there was some silly movie where, there was a person that went through some kind of trauma, and they were very selfish all the time and always drinking and always loathing themselves and just getting into a mess. But somebody said, you were given everything in life and you turned it into nothing, where some people have nothing in their life and they turn it into everything. And you have a choice. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to take note of that, because it's like, in some ways with adoption, you lose everything. So you kind of start off like a blank slate, but also with this emptiness and the nothingness. But on the other hand, you do have things, even just, the fact that so many people risked their lives and went through so much as, boats to get here tells you have to make a lot of the opportunities of being here, because other people have risked their whole family's lives and their own lives coming here for a reason. So here you are. So yeah, in some ways I feel like I've just got to make the most of what I have here. And the other thing is, I remember feeling really guilty because I felt like I had too much. And, obviously I don't know what my family are. They could be fine, or they could be not having enough. And I felt very guilty. And someone says, like, guilt only gets you so far and then it's meaningless. You get half an hour for guilt. It's like, only half an hour? Like, what about 45 minutes? And it's like, oh, as long as you want. But literally, like, it's real. So go through the guilt, but like, put a limit on it. Don't let it go on forever, because it's not useful. It's not going to change anything. What's going to change something is, action, so definitely I'm not really zen and calm. I think it's just that I've learned very different survival techniques than a lot of people, not necessarily adoptees. Adoptees have really fine-tuned survival techniques and rationalities and so on. They do live in a very different world to Vietnamese, or, you know, the people that adopt them often. But yeah, so I think just trying to make the most of being here, what you've got, you know, and just when something's not right, it's like, how could it be? Because you left a war, and, you know, wars aren't clean occasions. They're very, very messy. People get separated. People have to make decisions they don't always make in calmer times. So yeah, you just got to try and make your way through it, which isn't to say I don't get angry, but also for anyone that's listening, I guess, it's like, you know, you can get really stuck, and that's okay. But it's also okay to just try and give yourself time to work through it, and that maybe there are solutions that aren't going to be perfect, but they will help you move through life. So you just got to have a bit of patience sometimes.
One problem with these podcasts is the people listening have no understanding, just as I had no understanding of who you are before we got to know each other, or before I got to research your life. You've done a lot. You've done an extraordinary amount of work in the world of sociology, in the world of adoption. You have received an OAM, and I'm so stupid because I didn't like write it out, like what it meant. But I know it's a medal from Australia. It's one of the higher medals that the government awards you in 2006, right?
That's right. A medal in the Order of Australia. Yeah, I received one, and then I gave it back.
Yes, you gave it back. Can you walk me through receiving it? Why did you receive it? And why did you give it back? Okay. What is this medal?
Yeah, I don't know. We have in America, in the British system, of which Australia is a colonized nation. The construction of Australia as a nation is British shaped. You will have various honors and medals, and at the top of the medal system, you get knighted. So you're like Lady somebody or Sir somebody.
Lady Indigo Willing.
Lady Indigo. I want to be like Sir Mix-a-Lot. So in Indigo Mix-a-Lot. Yeah, so it's an award system for, I guess, you know, doing something to the community, going beyond what's expected. Some people get them for bravery. Obviously, in the military, you get them for bravery and various things. But just for the general population, if you've excelled in sport or theatre, or you've done community work, the medal system is a way to recognize that. And it's an anonymous system where somebody nominates you, and they go through some vetting system, and then they announce them every Queen's birthday here, and a occasion what they call Australia Day, which the Indigenous people here call Invasion Day, because it marks the arrival of British ships to Australia. And of course, Australia wasn't an empty country. It wasn't terra nullius, as they say here, with no people. There are Indigenous people here. And with the arrival of the British fleet, they claimed that there weren't. And so here we have the nation of Australia. And I think America can look at its own history and work out, you know, parallels, and same with Canada. Anyway, so I received the Medal in the Order of Australia, which is at the community level. So there are much higher ones. There's like maybe 3 tiers, and I'm on the community level in recognition of my work with Adopted Vietnamese, because I set up a network for them for my community to meet online, share information about our history, share information about searching for people, and so on. So I set that up in 2000 on the 25th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, and it's now 22 years running. So it's been running for a while. And yeah, it's just a nice, it's, you know, you get community awards for looking after puppy dogs, you know, like it's just a nice thing. It's not, don't take it too seriously, but enjoy it in its sense. But anyway, so a lot of people, you get to put it after your surname. So I was Indigo Willing OAM, or Dr. Indigo Willing OAM, which is short for Medal in the Order of Australia. And it's just you know, you can use it at fancy dinners or something, I don't know. And it's great in the sense that it helps open the door for Vietnamese people or Indigenous people, or, you know, people that are marginalized in many ways. It's kind of like a status symbol. If you're a lady or sir somebody and you want to do a charity dinner, or you want to do something, it really can help you enter a space where there are influential people or people that have funds and so on. And then in 2021, it's always been a mystery how they give out these medals, and they gave one to a tennis player called Margaret Court, who is one of the most brilliant women tennis players in the history of the sport. But she's also very discriminatory towards people that are transgender and people that are gay. She said some, allegedly said some things that aren't very, very helpful to young people that have those experiences. And she received the highest order, so the highest medal you can get. And it was actually Clara, a doctor, a transgender doctor, that gave hers back. She said, look, I don't want it if you're giving out to that. It's just a joke. And what's the system that you even do this? And then a lot of news people, celebrities, influential authors were giving theirs back. And given that I'm in the sport and I co-run a skating network for women and non-binary and queer people, and discrimination is a very important thing for me. And I'm also very conscious of whose land I'm on, which is Indigenous land, and holding the ceremony when they do, and on a date that's very offensive. I thought, well, now's a good time just to use that medal again for something useful, which is to make a protest in favor of highlighting equity and telling any youth that feel discriminated against in this nation that they're giving medals to people that say things like their lives don't matter. It's a good opportunity to say you do matter. And, here's a way of protesting it. So like people have given back Nobel Prizes, I think, because they didn't like who got it. Just, you can get the medal, and that helps you highlight the work that you do and helps you advance a cause. And the same thing with giving it back sometimes. I'm not saying everyone should give it back, because it does help you. But at the same time, if there's an occasion for it to mean something, whether it's giving it back or whatever it is, you take it. And this was an occasion where there was a movement and the momentum to give them back. And I thought, just sitting around the house, and I'm going to give it back because my work speaks for itself. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But by giving it back, it's making a statement when we need to start making statements. And it was after 2020. So it was when Black Lives Matter was really in everyone's mind very strongly, after, the horrible murder of George Floyd, and just making a real difference, not just for in America for Black Americans, but for Indigenous people here who identify as Black as well. So Black Lives Matter in Australia means Aboriginal Australians and Torres Strait Islander peoples as well. So yeah, it was just an occasion. Sometimes you just don't know what's around the corner, and something presents itself and you can take action, and I just like taking action. So I thought, let's do it. And so that was the Medal in the Order of Australia story. A bit long, sorry.
When I was reading that story, I found it a little humorous in this way. So you get like a double prestige benefit from it, because the first time you get the OAM, then you get it, right? That's the first prestigious moment. But then the second prestigious moment is you gave it back. So so it's like a good double whammy where you actually get it twice. But I'm wondering, does it even make a difference that it does make a difference because you took a stance that you'd give it back. But does it make a difference in people's minds, like who introduce you to or invite you to these like big dinners, and they're like, well, she is an OEM technically, but she gave it back, so it all works out in the end? Or do people just forget like you were given that OAM award?
Yeah. The only time I remind people of it is because not many minorities make it to the corridors of power and make it to the top jobs in parliament or make it to lead universities. And a lot of the ones that do have these medals or honors system, it is very important. So it was a big thing actually as a Vietnamese person to give it back. And a few people tried to talk me out of it and said, look, this can really help your work. And I'm a casual contract worker, so I don't have job security. I'm not tenured or any of that kind of stuff. And so it was a sacrifice, and it still is. And you just got to live by what your gut tells you, because I can't look at my friends that are transgender and sort of think, like people are doing this, and I thought my status was more important than your rights. It just didn't feel good on so many fronts, but that's one of them. And also, of course, we're Vietnamese, both of us, so we both know the difficulties with the Vietnamese diaspora here, the Vietnamese people in Vietnam. We know the divisions and the heartaches and the trouble. But it did mean a lot to me that people protested against the Vietnam War that are Australian. And people got arrested to try and stop children, getting bombed that they'd never met. They didn't know anything about Vietnam, and they were protesting to stop a war and getting arrested and throwing their careers in line of risk for something that they believed in. So I grew up in an era where I knew about those sort of sacrifices, and, they do end up sometimes being meaningful. So South Africa, Vietnam War, like various social protests, they can be quite meaningful and make a difference, and you can be on different sides of history. And I'm making no judgments about, the Vietnamese political system at all. I'm just really talking from a child that was in an orphanage and saw lots of, death and destruction to people that could have been my family, that it just meant something that people here didn't want that to happen, and stood up against, the violence of a military, operation more than anything. So, yeah, I don't know. You do get it. It's fun to say I gave it back. And especially like sometimes I do meet important people and they're like, you might forget to put their OAM in there or their medal, or they're just acting pompous. And it's like, yeah, well, I had one and I gave it back. So calm down, dude. Like, I'll put it down on the paper for you, but don't take yourself so seriously. And, they get surprised because I'm a skateboarder and, I don't look like I'd, even be close to having anything like that. And it's like, yeah, but we're Vietnamese. So we've got stuff, we've got skills, we've got, determination, and maybe some of us just don't live up to your stereotypes. But yeah, I do think at times we're going to have to make sacrifices, and particularly now, post 2020, we know we have to stand up against things that can be uncomfortable and risk our careers or risk things. But you can't always be complicit with things. You shouldn't have to choose, but sometimes you will have to. And I think that was just a minor thing. You're right. It's just a medal. Like what does it really, it's nothing really, but it's something. So just trying to keep yourself accountable as well, I guess, to where power is and what power you have, how to expend it in a useful way is a good thing.
I want to just ask a little bit further about this scenario because it fascinates me. I don't run into a lot of people in the United States I don't think we do. We might, like the Congressional Medal of Honor is the most I can think of, or they give it out for award for arts and music. Yeah. But is there a way that you could have the government do something about that tennis player to have you reclaim the OAM and other people? Is there a movement towards that? Because I can't imagine just giving it back and saying, that's the end of it. No, I want my thing back. But you have to do action as the government, right?
Yeah, so you probably could if they rearrange the whole, like you protest against the organization that does the medals, and who knows, like maybe those people will want to mobilize on that. But there's just so many other things to do. And the fact that they give out the awards is still as a symbolic of British colonialism on the Queen's birthday and on what's called Invasion Day or / Australia Day, it's still not right until they create an award system that is far more respectful to First Nations people. Again, it's not great, and it's no disrespect to the Indigenous people that have received them, and Vietnamese people and other people that have accepted and keep theirs or whatever. But it's definitely an issue has been raised about what they symbolize and when they're given out that still feels very it feels like it's urgent to change. It's very disrespectful, and it could very much be changed. It's so easy to change. It's something that's easy to change, so if there is a movement of people that are pushing to change the award system and to change that date, I would gladly sign that again for sure. But
is it a medal you send back, or do you physically just publicly renounce it?
Yeah, so you publicly renounce it and they take you off the record. So I had my medal code and they've taken me off the website, I guess. And it's announced in the Gazette down in Canberra by the government, by the Governor General, whoever does it. and you send the medal back, but I actually lost mine, so I'm gonna have to find it. They gave me 3 and they have most of them, so I've just got to find the other one. And yeah, I feel that there's just other things to worry about now. That, like I said, like I'm very instinctive and impulsive, and I like living in the moment. And when those moments come, I like making a decision that's meaningful if I can. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm a real doofus at times. I've got to learn a lot, like just the way I was raised. I'm very ignorant around many things that I really wish I wasn't. So, but there's so much to do that's just a one. Again, it's like a chapter. It's like I could chase that letter that I lost and make that a big thing. And it's like, maybe there's a time and a place for all these things, and yeah, there's just definitely a lot of other things that need to be done at present. So, yeah, and also just where you end up. I never thought I'd be a skateboarder writing books about equity and skateboarding and social change and running co-running a skateboarding network and a network about consent in skateboarding and doing research on sport. You can't sort of choose where you end up sometimes. It's just sort of like a bit of a nice surprise, and yeah, you just got to take things as they come and make the most of it, I guess. That's just maybe me making the most of whatever's around.
Kudos to your integrity, because that takes a lot of strength and courage to return something like that, and the prestige that comes with it, and perhaps the benefits of helping out the community at large, and that gets stripped away because you hand back your medal, this prestige, this object of prestige, symbol of prestige, and to have that sort of like dedication to doing the right thing is such a big thing.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. That's my philosophy. I think sometimes, but yeah, it was interesting that you've done your research on my life. And I hope again that, anyone that's listening, I mean, I find at least Vietnamese Australians, we're very driven and we can accomplish a lot. We've been through a lot of struggle. And each story is really important. But it's also not linear. You're going to have ups and downs, twists and turns with being a Vietnamese person. So, I just feel like if somebody, has these occasions where they do get, some kind of opportunity to make a difference, even if it's a little painful, it's probably, it's not as scary as they think. It'd be my advice on the medal thing is like, it's not always bad to take a risk. Same with skateboarding. Sometimes taking a risk is just going to put you in a better place all around.
Thank you so much for today. I got to know so much. I came for the adoption stories, but I began to see the bigger picture of your life, which is, the skateboarding is very symbolic of freedom and integrity and, just living a life here in the moment and being present to what's in front of us.
Yeah. So thank you for the conversation. It's always a pleasure to discuss being Vietnamese and what it means to be Vietnamese in the community. I'm just so honored, and thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for the work that you do in the Vietnamese adoption world. And I look forward actually to, seeing more of the work and hearing more about it in the future, and all the developments.
Can I give some shout outs? Is
yes,
that allowed?
Please,
Cool.
yes.
All right. So I've been talking for ages about the work that I do, which is with Adopted Vietnamese International, but I'm going to give a huge shout out to Linnell Long, who runs the Intercountry Adoptee Perspectives group. She is also in Erika Hayasaki's book. I think there's a bit written about her. And she looks after the networks of all people that are adopted from everywhere. So if you're adopted from Sri Lanka, the Caribbean, Brazil, and you're having the same kind of issues, she runs a hub for adoptees to talk about searching for birth parents, finding connections, socializing with each other, and so on. So she's of enormous help and runs a really great website for anybody that's adopted that's listening. So not just Vietnamese adoption, all adoptions, but also just really helpful. And of course, Erika Hayasaki's book is just it's very beautiful. And she really did her research. And I would normally not like outsiders to come into my community and write about us, because I feel like that doesn't always work well unless that person is very dedicated and sensitive. So it's so well researched, it's so beautiful, and she's just weaves a very important tale about the twins being reunited and also meeting their Vietnamese families. So and yeah, a shout out to you, because it's been so nice for you just to reach out to adoptees and just communicate with us, as you know, about our life story. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure. And to read about the twins out of Erica's book, Some More Sisters, was something that I knew nothing about. I mean, I know nothing about. I'm learning a lot about our culture as I'm doing this work. I know nothing. The more I dig, the more I realize I truly know nothing. And I never heard of this sort of angle of the Vietnamese adoption process and the life and times of people who are adopted. And, you know, we don't, just as lay people, we don't think about these things until we like have to kind of be thrusted into the world of a Vietnamese adopted person. And then we start to see the journey, especially after somebody like Erica puts together, you know, this 5-year work in her book that she puts. And then, so that would open a door for me to meet somebody like you to really open up the discussion about being adopted and the Vietnamese adoption process.
Yeah, well, thank you. So it's yeah, I definitely hope that you get to speak to many more of us, because we're in filmmakers, we're like designers, we're writers, academics, we just skateboard, you know.
Yeah, skaters.
Each one we bring our own particular unique outlook to it and change things just a little. And particularly with so-called mixed race kids as well, like all of the kids that came out, you have some really cool conversations ahead of you.
You know, I don't normally ask for people's handles a lot as I'm recording like this, but I'm going to ask for yours because I think that people should come to your Instagram to see the pictures that you've posted, and they're wonderful. You know, I couldn't get enough of it because, you know, you see these videos of you doing all these tricks and stuff like that. So it's fascinating. I really enjoyed it. So what's your Instagram handle?
Okay, if you want to see like a middle-aged Vietnamese mum skateboarding that's an academic, this is the place to go, or not. So it is at Good Willing Hunting, because my last name is Willing, and it's a play off the movie Good Will Hunting, because he was an orphan and he went to uni and stuff. So yeah, Good Willing Hunting is my handle.
Wonderful.
Skate or die.
It's awesome. Thank you so much once again.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcast.